Probably the overall most common verse that Muslims use to show that Islam is a religion of peace is, of course, Surah 2:256, which that's where we get, there is no compulsion in religion. Let me read to you what the verse says. There is no compulsion in religion. Truly, the right way has become clearly distinct from error. Therefore, whoever disbelieves in Satan and believes in Allah, he indeed has laid hold on the firmest handle, which shall not break off, and Allah is hearing, knowing. So, there is no compulsion in religion. We hear this over and over and over again from Muslims like Shabir Ali and Jamal Badawi and organizations like CARE. There's no compulsion in religion. How could you say that Islam promotes violence towards anyone? Well, if this were the only verse in the Qur'an, if this were the only verse where the Qur'an ever addresses how you are to deal with unbelievers, I would say, all right, you've got a point. This certainly sounds like Islam is a religion of peace. The problem is, this isn't the only verse in the Qur'an, and if we follow the methodology laid down in the Qur'an itself, we see that this verse has absolutely nothing to do with how Muslims are to live in the world today. Now, there are tons of interpretations of Surah 2:256. The main interpretation of it is that when you apply the methodology laid down in the Quran to it, you see it doesn't apply. And here's why. In Islam, if you read the Quran, you find all kinds of passages that seem to contradict one another. Is this a problem? Well, the Muslim says no, because in Islam, there is the rule of abrogation. There's a doctrine called abrogation. If a verse comes later, and it seems to conflict with a verse that came earlier, then it's the later verse that applies, and the former verse has been canceled. God has given something better. And we find this in Surah 16:101. We find it in Surah 2:106, where Allah specifically says, when we cancel one of the former verses, it's because we're giving you something better. And so Muslims know, Muslims who understand the Quran know, that if you find two verses and they seem to conflict with one another, all you have to do is go to the Sirah literature, go to the Hadith, go to the commentaries, see which verse was revealed last, and that's the verse that applies to Muslims in the world today. So, Surah 2:256, is that a verse that applies today? Was this one of the last verses that was revealed? Or could perhaps another verse, such as Surah 9:5 or Surah 9:29, which command Muslims to fight unbelievers because they're unbelievers, do one of these passages hold for Muslims today? Well, let me give you the words of Ibn Kathir, one of the greatest Sunni Islamic commentator of all time. Commenting on this verse, on Surah 2:256, he says, this verse is abrogated by the verse of fighting. You shall be called to fight against the people given to great warfare, then you shall fight them, or they shall surrender. 48:16. Allah also says, O Prophet, strive hard against the disbelievers and the hypocrites, and be harsh against them. 9:73. And he says, O you who believe, fight those of the disbelievers who are close to you, and let them find harshness in you, and know that Allah is with those who are pious. So according to Ibn Kathir, this verse, because it came so early, was abrogated by later commands which clearly call Muslims to fight unbelievers because they're unbelievers. And Ibn Kathir, again, the greatest Sunni commentator, concludes with this. Therefore, all people of the world should be called to Islam. If any one of them refuses to do so or refuses to pay the jizya, they should be fought till they are killed. Call people to Islam. This is the rule that applies to Muslims today based on the later revelations, verses like 9:29. You call them to Islam. If they refuse to come to Islam and they refuse to pay the jizya, you fight them until they are dead. Now think about this. Muslims in the West are saying, no, in Islam, it's a religion of peace because of Surah 2:256. Well, according to the methodology laid down in the Quran, and according to your greatest commentators, this verse no longer applies. Why are you pretending that it does? Because Muslims in the West are allowed to practice taqiyya. They're allowed to deceive us in order to keep us from knowing the truth about Islam.